I never thought I'd be thankful for breaking my leg. But life has a funny way of serving justice sometimes. It all started 3 months ago when I moved into Sycamore Estates, a picturesque neighborhood with pristine lawns and cookie-cutter houses. As a single guy in my 40s who works from home as an Americans with Disabilities Act compliance officer, I was looking forward to some peace and quiet. Little did I know that my profession would become relevant in my own front yard. The day after closing on my new home, I received a welcome basket and a 3-ring binder containing the HOA bylaws from Marjorie Kingsley, our esteemed HOA president. Most people called her Karen behind her back, but I didn't know why until later. She was about 60 with an impeccably maintained platinum blonde bob and designer clothes that seemed excessive for a Tuesday afternoon. Karen speaking, with a saccharine smile. "We're just so thrilled to have a responsible homeowner join our little community. I've taken the liberty of highlighting the most commonly violated rules. You'd be shocked at how many people don't understand the importance of uniformity and maintaining property values." I thanked her politely, noting the artificial sweetness in her voice that reminded me of diet soda. Trying to be pleasant, but leaving a strange aftertaste, I scanned through the binder later that evening, chuckling at the absurdly specific rules about everything, from mailbox heights to the acceptable colors of garden hoses. But I could live with it. The neighborhood was beautiful, and my new home was perfect for me. 2 weeks after moving in, disaster struck. I was hiking in a nearby state park when I slipped on some loose gravel and tumbled down a short but steep embankment. The result was a compound fracture of my right tibia and fibula that required immediate surgery. After a 3-day hospital stay, I returned home with metal pins in my leg, a wheelchair for the next month, and strict instructions to avoid stairs while I healed. There was just one problem. My house had 3 steps leading up to the front door. My brother came over the weekend after my surgery and constructed a simple but sturdy wooden ramp over the steps. It wasn't pretty, but it was functional and followed all the proper slope requirements I knew by heart from my work. The ramp allowed me to get in and out of my house independently, which was essential since I lived alone. I should have known trouble was brewing when I spotted Karen standing at the edge of my driveway the next morning, taking photos of my new ramp with her phone. She was wearing what I'd come to recognize as her official HOA inspection outfit: khaki capri pants, a navy blue polo shirt with the HOA logo embroidered on the chest, and a visor that seemed wholly unnecessary given the cloudy weather. I waved from my front window, but she pretended not to see me. The dreaded HOA violation letter arrived in my mailbox the very next day. I wheeled myself down to retrieve it, already anticipating the contents. "Dear homeowner," it began, with my name nowhere to be found, despite the fact that Karen had personally welcomed me to the neighborhood 3 weeks earlier. "It has come to our attention that an unauthorized structure has been erected on your property. According to Section 7, Paragraph 3 of our community bylaws, all external modifications to homes must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee before construction begins. Please remove the non-compliant wooden structure within 72 hours, or face a fine of $50 per day until compliance is achieved." I sighed and reached for my phone to call the HOA office. After 3 rings, Karen herself answered, with a clipped, professional tone. Me, speaking calmly. "Hello, Marjorie. This is David Anderson from 427 Sycamore Drive. I received a violation notice about my temporary wheelchair ramp, and I'd like to discuss it." Karen, speaking with obvious condescension. "Oh, David, yes, I noticed that eyesore yesterday. I'm afraid those kinds of structures really bring down the aesthetic appeal of our community. You'll need to submit a formal request to the committee, which meets on the first Monday of each month. Until then, you'll need to remove it. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to remain professional. After all, dealing with difficult people was part of my job. Me, speaking with measured patience. I understand the rules, Marjorie, but this is a temporary medical necessity. I broke my leg quite badly and can't navigate steps for at least the next 4 weeks. The Americans with Disabilities Act provides for reasonable accommodations in such cases. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before Karen responded, her voice noticeably cooler. Karen, speaking with dismissal. The ADA applies to businesses and public spaces, not private residences or homeowners associations. Our bylaws are quite clear. If everyone started building whatever they wanted, whenever they had a minor inconvenience, property values would plummet. I'm sure you can find another solution, perhaps a nice, strong young man to carry you up and down the steps. I nearly choked at her suggestion. Not only was it incredibly patronizing, but it also showed a complete misunderstanding of disability rights. I decided to try once more. Me, speaking with clarity. Actually, Marjorie, the Fair Housing Act extends many ADA protections to residential settings, including temporary modifications for medical needs. I'd be happy to provide documentation from my surgeon about the necessity of the ramp. Karen, speaking with finality. I'm afraid I'll need to insist on following proper channels. Remove the ramp and submit your requests through the appropriate forms. The committee will consider it at next month's meeting. Until then, I suggest you make other arrangements. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my wheelchair, staring at my phone in disbelief. As someone who had dedicated his career to ensuring accessibility for people with disabilities, I was well aware of my rights. But I also knew that fighting with the HOA could be a lengthy and frustrating process. The next morning, I emailed Karen and the entire HOA board a polite but firm letter explaining my situation, attaching a doctor's note and citing the relevant sections of the Fair Housing Act. I received no response. Instead, 2 days later, I woke up early to the sound of power tools outside my front door. I quickly transferred from my bed to my wheelchair and rolled to the window. What I saw made my blood boil. Karen was supervising 2 men from the HOA's landscaping company as they dismantled my ramp. I hurried to get dressed, a challenging process with my bulky cast. And by the time I managed to open my front door, they had already removed half of the structure. Me speaking with controlled anger. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing? You can't just remove my property without permission." Karen turned to face me, a satisfied smile on her face. Karen speaking with smug authority. "Good morning, David. As per our conversation and the violation notice, the non-compliant structure is being removed. You had ample time to address this yourself." Me speaking firmly. "This is illegal, Marjorie. You can't remove a medically necessary accommodation. I sent documentation explaining this situation." Karen speaking condescendingly. "The board reviewed your email and found it insufficient. Our bylaws clearly state," me interrupting. "I don't care what your bylaws state. Federal law supersedes HOA rules. You need to stop this immediately." Karen's eyes narrowed as she took a step closer to me, lowering her voice so the workers couldn't hear. Karen, speaking threateningly. "Listen, David. I've been running this HOA for 15 years. Every new homeowner thinks they can come in and change the rules or find loopholes. It doesn't work that way here. This ramp is an eyesore that affects everyone's property values. If you want to live in this community, you play by our rules." I pulled out my phone and started recording, me speaking calmly. "Please state your name and position for the record." Karen speaking with surprise. "What are you doing?" Me speaking professionally. "I'm documenting this violation of the Fair Housing Act. As I informed you previously, I am temporarily disabled and require this accommodation to access my home. By removing it without providing an alternative accommodation, you are discriminating against me based on my disability." Karen's face flushed red. Karen, speaking with false concern. "There's no need to be dramatic, David. We're simply enforcing our community standards. If you had submitted the proper paperwork—" Me interrupting. "The law doesn't require me to submit paperwork for temporary accommodations related to medical necessity. What the law does require is for housing providers, including HOAs, to make reasonable accommodations for residents with disabilities. Now please have your workers reassemble my ramp immediately, or I will be forced to file a formal complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development." Karen stared at me for a long moment, clearly weighing her options. Then, with obvious reluctance, she turned to the workers. Karen, speaking with frustration. "Put it back together. We'll deal with this situation through other channels." The workers exchanged confused glances but began reassembling the ramp. Karen gave me one last glare before marching back to her house across the street. I knew this wasn't over.